Welcome back to the Joseph Graham Show. Super excited today. I have Susie Albert Miller on. Now, we've been trying for, I think, 3 to 4 months get you on, and then my schedule was crazy, and your schedule was crazy. And we met through our friend James Eltroy Dixon. Great guy. You need to check him out. He's been on the episode before. But Susie, tell us who you are, what you do, who you help. I know beforehand you said you've been speaking for over 20 years. You've been in this game for a while. So give us a little bit of your background and what you like to do now.
I was a misbehavior in school. And I think it put me on the path of becoming an entrepreneur very early on in my life. I have master's degrees and I'm educated because I come from education is the ticket to success family. But I was a misbehavior. And so, I mean, I got A's and everything, but I was the kid who talked too much in class. And I remember the day my dad said, if you can make money, hear me speak with a microphone in your hand. I was like, I turned that what they said was wrong with me into a career. So basically, my career has had lots of iterations. I'm a trained psychologist. I left that behind. I am currently a consultant and strategist for high-level business owners, for CEOs. I've been called a CEO whisperer. My clients call me a fixer. A little bit of Brene Brown meets Olivia Pope. I work with leaders and high performers in the self-leadership, communication, accountability space, kind of that next level that once you've ticked all the boxes and read all the books and something's not quite right in your life and you're not quite sure what it is, that's usually when I get called in. And that shows up in people's personal lives and people's professional lives where they're not connecting with their people. They're having huge turnover. They're living the life on the front end that looks great, but in the back end, they're miserable. And so they're kind of just surviving. And so for me, I help people really thrive in the relationships and places in their life that matter most.
I love that because I know a ton of high performers. We were talking before the show started of all the different people we knew. And I'm just sitting here going, you can tell the people that are enjoying what they're doing, and you can tell the people that are like, they have it looking like they're the bomb, but you get to talk to them, they're just like miserable and all. So, how did you even get to do that? Because that's not just like a normal calling card. Now, I know I like the misbehaving part, the disruptor part. I love that vibe there, but how did you start? Did how did you land on that? Because that's not like your typical, I'm going to be a life coach, I'm going to be a sales coach, I'm going to be whatever. That's kind of different.
Yeah, it's a great question. Most people end up somewhere in their life based on their story. And I had some significant traumas in my young years that started showing up in my life in ways that were not productive. They weren't great in my marriage. They weren't great with my kids. And I knew there was stuff I didn't know. And so I'm a lifelong learner. Like I said, was raised by actually a brain scientist. And so I was, education was always important. Learning was important. And so I started down a path of self-discovery, ended up in therapy, which I think is a great modality, and decided I wanted to help people get free of some of the things that were holding them back. So I went and got trained as a therapist and as a theologian. It was really important to me to understand how my faith story fit in, and
Mhm.
started working. We were in the DC area, and kind of what shifted for me, I did a lot of work in that and I loved it. I loved helping people become aware of what was possible and where their story was holding them back, and where they could take their mess and make it a message. The kind of wounds into wisdom is what I call it now. And I worked with a lot of men. And what they liked about me was I was direct, and I didn't blame them for all the stuff in their life. They were like, wow, you're the first person who didn't say, hey, you're just a jerk. And I started giving them tools on how. I was a marriage and family therapist. And so I taught them how to have better relationships at home. And they started coming in and saying, can you teach us at my company? Can you come in and that I tried that thing you told me with them and at home, and now it's working with my clients and customers. And where I lived, you couldn't do that. And so kind of fortunate, unseen or whatever, conversion of a bunch of events, I ended up shutting down my private practice and moving into consulting and then executive coaching, because I wanted to be able to impact more people as opposed to just in my very limited, like the rule-based of the office. This is what you can do. And where I was, you could not have any relationship with your clients outside of that hour. And so it was very limiting. And at the same time, I ended up having cancer, and there were some things in my life that just kind of clashed. And I was like, time for a change. So I took the leap and started a consulting business, and I love it. I love the fact that there are people who are so successful in the world's eyes. They're making lots of money. They're running, multi-million, billion-dollar companies, or they're working in the Fortune, 50, 100, 500, and they know there's more. It's like if you've ever seen The Matrix, that splinter in their brain, and they don't know what it is. And usually that's where I get to come in and go, okay, let's explore that. Let's figure out what is it that you really want? Where is the misery, and whether that shows up in how they are showing up with their team and leading their company or in their home life. We just start looking at what needs to be addressed. And one of my clients looked at me and he goes, "You talk about stuff I can't Google." I was like, "Oh yeah, right. If you can Google it, I'm not your girl." So that's how I ended up here. And I've written a book, and I'm writing another book on leadership now. My first book is Listen, Learn, Love. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's traditionally published. And for me, people ask when I'm going to retire. I have kids in my 30s now, so I'm on the backside of the second third of my life. And I love what I do. I can't see that happening. I'm not planning for retirement. I'm planning to continue to make a difference in as many lives as I can. My vision as it stands is to make a difference in the lives of 10,000 leaders, so that as they begin to understand and live in their authenticity and who they are, they then impact the people around them, and it ripples out to 1 million people living unapologetically their best life.
I love that. You dropped like about 15 nuggets in there, by the way. So we're gonna rewind a little bit, because I listen to people for a living. That's like my job as a
Yeah, I
salesperson.
know.
And I'm kind of like unwinding. First and foremost, you talked about your faith, and you were a psychologist and a theologian. Those two a little bit different, not like bad, but so let's start there. When you said that, because I have always been, and I had another friend of mine named Joy on, and I'm like, if you don't challenge your beliefs, are they really your beliefs, or are you just what you've been given? So for faith, what when you did you just decide to become a theologian to challenge your belief, or did you have a belief system that you were just locked into? What was that about?
I got tired of people telling me what the books that led my faith said about life and who I was and who I was created to be, and it just didn't make sense. I want to be real careful here, because I am not religious. I am very spiritual. I have a deep faith in what I've chosen, but I believe that there's so much more than what we understand. Okay. And so I have an openness to the reality. And in my Thrive program, the very last THRIVE is about energy, and how Nikola Tesla talks about, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so I think about the fact that we are spiritual beings, which is just energetic beings with skin on. The way I practice that in my spiritual journey is in the Christian faith. And I just got tired of people telling me that I was an unsubmissive woman who wasn't supposed to lead. And I was like, but God made me this way. What do I do with that? And it was the tradition I was raised in. No fault, no harm, no foul, but this is what I'd always been told. And so I was like, that doesn't fit. And so I started doing exploration, and that's why I went, so I could actually go, no, it actually could mean one of three things. And that really set me on a path of freedom, to be at a place now where I get to work with people and say, it could be, and maybe there's more. Maybe there's things we don't understand that can set us free to actually live as spiritual beings having a human experience.
I love that, because like even and I'm a Christian, but I'm more spiritual. Like I've been through the whole gambit of different denominations or whatever, and I'll say it less cookie cutter than you will. I'll be a little bit probably harsher with it. Women did a bunch of stuff in the Bible. Esther saved the nation. Deborah did a bunch of stuff. So this whole concept, Aquila and Priscilla were working with
Right.
Paul. So
Yeah.
get
So
out
if I'm
of
really
the
snarky, I caved
1400s or
into it.
whatever.
Yeah, I got tired of men telling me what was wrong with me because I challenged what they said. So I went
Yeah,
to seminary.
I love it though. But you didn't just. I think what I'm liking about you already, and we've just gotten to know each other, is that you challenge things, but you back it up with understanding, knowledge, and wisdom. And that might be the educational side of you. So you're not just, I want to challenge and disrupt, but you actually have a way that formulates the argument that makes perfect sense and is actually logical. And a lot of times people, men, women in general, just, this is what I've been told, this is what I have to do. And that's doesn't work. That's annoying in
Yeah, thank you for that. I received that. I spent a lot of my life reacting and realized that that was not getting me the results I wanted. And so I mean, again, with age comes wisdom. And I just said to a client the other day, I hated when people said that. You're older, I'll tell you. And now I'm one of those people that goes, let me tell you what you learn, because when you're older, you really do, if you're willing, you learn some things. And so being able to respond in these situations differently has shifted how, not just how I show up in relationship with people, but how I show up with myself. And so I am a disruptor, but it's not in a disruptive way, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
It's in a way that makes people go, huh, that's a possibility. I never thought of it that way. Whereas before, I'm like, give me the rock, I'll throw it.
But the people that are unreasonable change the world. That's a true statement. I think it was Bernard Shaw that said it. I could be quoting the wrong person. But I think you have to push the limits. And really what happens is that people that are high achievers, people that are entrepreneurs, people that build businesses or coach or consult, we don't just accept the world as what people say it is. We would get bored with that. It doesn't make sense to us. So we have to push the limits and grow. And that's what you're here for, so that other women, men, boys, girls, whatever, can become who they need to be. So no, I love that part. So you did that. Then you said, oh, by the way, I had cancer. Like just randomly, just went on by it. So you went through a battle with cancer. And it looks like you did well with it. Like it's not there, which is good. But that's another major shift that a lot of people deal with. So was that the epiphany moment for you to be like, I'm going to live a life I want to live and screw everyone else? Not like be mean to them, but like this is my life to live.
Um, I think yes. I think so. One of the things that I've identified myself as for many years is a possibilitarian, and that's not unique to me. Kelly Ray Roberts said that first, and I love that, which is what's possible. One of my mentors, Dan Miller, who recently passed away, he did 48 days. Look him up; he's amazing. He would look at things and he'd say, "What does this make possible?" That's my interpretation of it. I was like, what does this make possible? And so I've had a lot of things in my life thrown at me that, like read through when you list, the 10 things that, people struggle with in their life. I think I've had about 8 to 10 of them, 8 of the 10. And as a result, I became what I call a survivor. I was a survivor and I was surviving. And it began to take its toll on my health. You're going to love this. I'm going to drop another bomb. I battled debilitating chronic illness for 15 years. The treatment that cured my cancer really messed up my lungs. And so I went from being very active to not being able to breathe and speak and run or walk. I couldn't make it across a parking lot without. And so I'm on the other side of that as well. But when you face trials, you get to choose, how is this going to affect my life? Like this, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And I didn't understand that for a long time. And it wasn't in this resignation, oh, well, it was, what does this make possible? So all of that made possible some choices and some ways of looking at my life differently that changed the trajectory of my life. It was, if I'm not going to be around for a long time, what am I going to be about for the time I'm around? Now, I plan to live a long time and I do what I need to for that. But it does, when you face crises, whatever they are, it's an opportunity in my mind to go, what's important? And one of the things in my Thrive framework is being really intentional. What's important? What matters? At the end of the day, when you are told when I first found out, they didn't know how bad it was. And I had a very curable cancer. So I'm very grateful for that. But when you don't know, when you face hard things like that, and as a nation, with COVID, we faced that. I don't want to talk about that, but we faced hard things that disrupted our life. I think you get a chance to go, what am I going to do with what's happening in my life? And when we do that well, it can fuel incredible ideas and opportunities and change and adventure. And so one of the things that led to for us, I shared this earlier, my husband and I took about 5 years and we lived in a tiny house, an RV tiny house, and we toured the country and we hiked and we kayaked in between working and you just look at life differently. So that's a long answer to your question. Yes, and.
I like that because, like, okay, I'm a sales coach. That's what I get people to hook, like to bring them in. But really, I like helping people wake up to a life they love living. What is it that fills your heart and soul with gladness? What makes you happy? What makes you tick? And what I've noticed is that until people have those moments, they get into their little cookie cutter lives and they do everything the same all the time. And I'm like, because I'm a disruptor as well. I can't do that. Like got into sales because my job ended and I was like, okay, cool. And I realized, oh, I can do a lot more in a lot less time and do what I want. Then I tried to sit at home on the couch afterwards, like I used to. I'm like, this doesn't work for me anymore. It's like that whole progression to where now I'm like, oh, I'm just going to start a podcast. Why? Because I just feel like it, like that whole pushing the limit thing. But I love that you and your husband, because you said it again, just like no big deal. I had a debilitating disease. Most people would just fold for that one. But my husband and I went, we just drove around in a little truck and we camped and we hiked and all. We were talking before the show. I fell hiking recently. I'm in pretty good shape. I do kickboxing, I do running, and I've been down for about 2 weeks because I felt not like down, but like I can't hike and I can't walk as much. It sucks. I'm
Oh,
not happy about it. Like I need to get out. I did a couple walks, but it's like almost like if someone tells you, and tell me if I'm wrong, Susie, if someone tells you, this is what you have, you're probably going to deal with it, you give them the proverbial FU and do the opposite.
I think my mother would say, yes, she does.
I
I
think your
would.
mom's right.
um, I was the kid when I was little that always asked the questions. One of my, I don't know how to say this without sounding weird. I just would see and know things, and I'd be like, "Well, wait a minute, what about?" And in the world I grew up in, the what abouts were not always welcome. And for a long time, I tried to behave, and I failed miserably at trying to behave. And so I got to a place in my life where I was like, "What if I just be me?"
Hmm.
And as I went through things, it wasn't easy. I mean, there were days, and months where you don't go through those things and just be like, "Oh, I had that." Where I battled and wrestled and with battled depression and anxiety and hopelessness and questioning everything I was raised to believe in, and really had to look at all of the things in my life that I had that were like the tent pegs for me and choose. I remember, so when COVID happened, my lungs were really bad. And I remember I had been praying to be healed. And there was the doctor I was working with who was trying to figure out what was wrong with my lungs, said, I don't know if you get COVID if you'll live. So you need to be really, really careful. And he was a doctor at National Jewish in Denver, brilliant man, premier respiratory clinic. Like he was not, there was no politics in this. It was just, I'm doing research.
100%.
Here's what I'll tell you. And my prayers went from, please God heal me, to please may I just stay alive. And that I would say was one of the biggest turning points for me, where I was like, okay, if I'm going to live, I don't want to just survive.
Hmm.
And as I looked back, that was a theme for me. And that's kind of where I came up with, how do I help people thrive? Because what did it look like to thrive when you are struggling with different things in your life? It's not like, oh, everything's great. It's like, for me, the very first time that meant that while I couldn't walk across a parking lot without stopping to catch my breath, I could walk halfway across the parking lot, and I didn't have an oxygen tank. And so I started doing the little things that moved me towards thriving versus that mentality of just surviving. And for me, that difference was moving into flow versus force. I've always been give me a square peg in a round hole and I will get it in there, because that is how I was raised and who I am. And I realized that was killing me. And to
Hmm.
move from that and to do the work to go, okay, wait, what does it look like to thrive? Not if I can't change my circumstances, can I change me in my circumstances? And that, Joe, has probably been the game changer for me over the last. I mean, I've named it for probably the last 5 years, but I've really been living it for about 7. And it's a different way of showing up in the world, if that makes sense.
It does. And it makes me think about what we were talking about before. You deal with a lot of men, and you just said there's power in surrender. That's very feminine. That's not a bad thing. But men have a very hard time surrendering because you said square peg, round hole, or whichever way you said it. I
Yeah,
have been called that multiple times because
yeah,
I will push limits. I will ask questions.
right.
And my instinct, and I am a high achiever, my instinct is if there's a challenge, I'm attacking it. If there's something that has to get done, I'm going to endure and do. How do you help people like me learn to, and I've gone through this a little bit, so I am getting better at, but learn to surrender instead of just attack? And I'm putting in the terms that I would use because
Yeah, no,
most of
I
the guys
love
you're
that.
dealing with would say it exactly like this. They won't be nice about it. They're like, I just built a $50 million business. What do you mean I need to let it just happen?
Right. I love that. I have lived in my masculine energy for a long time. So it's really fun that you pointed that out, that it was a very feminine energy statement. And now I live in a much more integrated space. When I think about a square peg in a round hole, I think about the force of wearing down the edges. Like I will get it done because I will work hard, and we've been taught that that's what matters. What I learned was to go, can I have a round peg? Like the first lesson for me wasn't like, okay, I'm going to surrender and just be in flow. It was, wait, I just want a round peg. And I don't know what, so a client of mine, we're working together, and he runs, I'm trying to think how much I'm very, my clients pay for discretion and
Understand.
confidentiality. So he was dealing with a struggle, and the idea was we've always handled the struggle this way. And it was, wait, it was with a marketing client. There was a potential to lose this client. And it was like, what if there's another way? It wasn't just sit down and go, I hope something comes to me. It was, what's the round peg? And so for men, I love masculine energy. I think it's a fabulous, it's a necessary part. It drives the world. I think when men are given permission to pause long enough to go, I got two sides of me, kind of that yin yang. Because have you ever seen a man with babies or puppies? You know it's in there, right? And so to me, it's like, okay, what's the round peg? Like, what if it doesn't have to be hard? What if it can just be strategic? What if it can be intentional? We were raised to believe, you're going to succeed through hard work.
Hard work.
Yeah. And so to me, that was the kind of the first thought. And then I got to a place after I asked for a round peg for a while, kind of metaphorically, it was, what if I change the game? What if I say, I'm not going to play that game anymore? I'm going to look at my world differently. And so for a man, it's coming to, so again, $50 million company, let's say that, and he's having trouble with his people. And normally he'd be like, okay, you're fired, you're done, we're going to outsource you. And then there's an uprising, and they, culture changes, and they lose profitability because people are really the heart and soul of a business and the heart and soul of success. It's like, okay, what about some different people skills? What if one of the things I do with my leaders is teach them how to have hard conversations with themselves and with other people, the ones they're avoiding, so that they can actually enjoy their lives differently. And so to me, that would be an example. It wouldn't be saying, oh, just pretend it doesn't exist, just be positive. It'd be like, okay, what are some options here in terms of approaching it differently? And not just avoiding or not just attacking. So I have a conflict framework that I work on and speak about often, because for most people, it's the hard things we're not saying that are keeping us from the happiness we want or the profitability we want.
No, I like that a lot because, again, we're all in the space, and I've been in the sales space. So that's alpha male to the ninth degree, fake mask. I'm going to push through. Then I have some really hippie spiritual friends that, oh, I just sit and meditate and things happen for me. And I think there's a balance of both. There's times like I've done breathworks. I do walks. I do certain things to take time to refresh. But then there's a time you got to grind and grow. I
You
love
just got to pick up the phone and make the phone calls for your sales.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved how you reframed it though. Instead of changing the thing, can I just get around whole? We forget to ask the simple questions because we're so caught up in and this can go for anything, in the way we did it to get there. But the way we did to get there isn't going to be the way we get to scale, expand, or become who we need to be. I love that.
So true. And so if surrender, like sales, again, if you're in the sales field, I used to be in sales for a little bit. One of my forays into something fun. It's a numbers game. The world looks at results. Like we love to go, oh, this sounds so lovely, but what are the results? People want to know results. And so you have to be willing to look at the reality that you're living in, the water you swim in is what I call it. Like you can't look at be a salesperson and not be accountable for your results. What I think the shift is for someone who's doing it is the energy with which they do it. The person who says, oh, the sales just come from me, they still have to have the conversation about the sales.
Yep.
And so, but their energy with which they go about it is, of course you're going to buy from me, versus you gotta buy from me, please. I gotta grind. So I am not a hustle and grind person anymore. I think energetically our world's shown that it doesn't have to be that way, but that doesn't mean we don't have to take intentional action. If we're not taking intentional action, so that's the I in mind. If you're not intentional, if you're not setting intentions, then we'll see.
Yeah. You said something there, and I want people to catch it because you gave a secret away that they just might not have heard. When I go into a sale, I'm assuming you're buying, but I'm not pushing you to buy. I'm coming with confidence, that energy that I bring. Like on this call, we have an energy exchange going back and forth. That's why people are listening to it. When I go into a sale and I'm talking to people, I'm 100% focused on them fixing their problem, but I'm coming from an energy of, I know I have a problem that I can solve for you, not you need to buy my stuff. I just want you mentioned that again. You drop a bunch of golden nuggets, and I know sometimes people miss it. So I just want to highlight that too, because I'm like, oh, you did. And you also said sales is fun. So I like you already because most people don't think sales is fun. There's a few of us weirdos. That's part of my weirdness. I like sales. It works for me, but I think that's good.
So can I share a sales piece for all your, you probably have a ton of
Yeah.
salespeople. So
Oh,
when I
please do.
did some sales training, everybody sells. Everybody sells. I sell my husband on where I want to go to dinner. We sell our kids on getting to school on time. We are always selling. And the way I redefine sales is having conversations that move people to action. That's it. And when you begin to think about that, then it's not, oh, sales is pushy, or it's a whole different, it's a reframe. And if you reframe it and you reframe your energy, then it's like you said, you assume if I'm talking to someone, I have a solution to the problem you have. If I don't, if your problem isn't something I can solve, I'm going to pass you off to a great referral, because I hope your problem gets solved.
Love it. You just about like if you watch my stuff at or hear me talk, I literally say that constantly. And it's funny because a lot of times you're like, well, what, I need the sale. No, you need the referral more because it will come back to you. It'll come back to you way better because now likability, trust, and they know that you have their interest in mind first. And I think that's the key to sales, life, relationship, what you're building, what you're doing. So you do deal with a lot of high performing, like you said, men, and I'm sure high performing women as well.
Yeah.
Is there a big difference? Because now I'm curious, because I know a lot. Like we mentioned our friend Liz Benny. She's great. She's super high performing, but she has a different vibe to her than like our friend Brian Bogert, who comes with a different type of energy. Is there a way that you approach? Because in sales, I do this. I approach women differently than I approach men. With a lady, I ask. With a man, I tell. Reason being, men like to be told what to do because it's an order and a pecking thing type of thing. Women love to be asked or invited to. So when you're dealing with men and women, is there different ways you do it, or with what you do, it's a little bit different? So that's what I'm asking.
It's a great question. You're gonna hate my answer because it's yes and. Um, as you answered that, my mind was going to how do I do that? And you said it so well. When men like to be told, because tell me what to do, and if it fits with aligns with what I believe, I'll go ahead and do it. A lot of the women I work with, once you're in the high level, at least at this stage, sadly, still you have had to lead with a lot of masculine energy. So asking them is a place where they can really touch down and go, okay, what do you think? What are the solutions within you? Because they're not often asked that. So I think in terms of approach, that's just brilliant, Joe. I've never identified it as that. I think for me and the way I read the room is it's not as formulaic. I can tell what they need, but with men, they do prefer more directness. They
Yeah.
do prefer a sense of, they like that I'm that way, and sometimes they appreciate it, and we don't pussyfoot around. So I think listening and knowing the person you're talking to and knowing where they're coming from actually directs how we engage. Because I have a client, and literally it's just tell me how to say this better. It's not, hey, what are you thinking and feeling? It's like, I got this meeting I'm walking into, and what I want to do is blast the people. That's not going to go well for me. How do I language this differently? And it'll
Yep.
be a
Yep.
15-minute phone call. They have me on retainer. That's what they do, so that they don't blow up their world, their life, their work, their team. And that's a very direct question. So yes, and
No, no, I like it because I think about it this way. Men and women go in masculine and feminine energy different ways.
Mhm.
So you just have to understand how they respond. So I know I did a blanket statement, but again, I know some ladies that are super masculine and I will treat them like a guy because that's what they want. And I know some guys that would like to get asked. Like guys never get asked to do anything. You really want to blow a guy's mind? Ask him really, Lace. Not ask him and have the decision in your head, but ask him really what he wants. and just do that, and you'll blow him away. Because guys don't get asked at all. That's just, I went on a little tangent there. I know that's just
That's
thinking
great.
about it in my head because you got my mind thinking about, I do some stuff naturally that now that I'm like training people, it's like, how do I formulate this? Because my wife said this, and I'm sure this is what you do with people. There's certain things that you do naturally that are easy to you that are not easy to other people. But when someone else is trying to understand it, you're like, why don't they get that? This is easy. So how do you help people get past the uncomfortable thing? Because this has kind of been the thing we've been talking about a lot. Uncomfortable questions. How do you help people ask them in the right way so it doesn't come across? So, like if they're an atypical male, they're not coming across like, why the did you do this? That's not good. Or if they're really like a beta small male, why did you do it? That's not good either. How do you help them get into the right frame of mind? I'm assuming you deal
So
with alphas more than betas.
yes, I do. But that doesn't mean they're not concerned. So I'll kind of answer this in story form. I was doing a training at one point in time about how to have hard conversations, and there was 5 men in the room. It was up in the New York area, and there was probably $12 billion worth of assets sitting in the room between these 5 men. And we were talking about how we've been taught to deal with conflict, and there's 3 ways that we do that, and the alternative and the framework I use. And one of the men was like, how do I deal with the fact that my job all day disappoints people? I am disappointing people all day long. And that I'm the one that says no, the buck stops with me, the initiatives. And it was such a profound question, because what it revealed to me was that below the surface, again, nobody sets out to be I'm going to use almost nobody sets out to be a jerk, right? That even the people who are making the hardest decisions that cost people's livelihood and end people's positions aren't doing it from a, most often a power hungry place. It's this idea of what's going on. And so to me, what we see is rarely what's happening. It's that whole iceberg, and most of it's underneath. And so like that revealed to me that even having the hard conversations has an incredible amount of emotion attached to it, that to identify that and go, yeah, it sucks to disappoint people. And as we talked about it, it was this idea of, if you live your life to not disappoint people, then whoever's in front of you is running your life. It's the newest person you don't want to disappoint. And when you start adding 6, 8 people there, you're not living your life, you're living their life. And so it
Yeah.
came back down to, what's the intention? What do you want? What are you creating? What's the outcome you're looking to produce or derive? And then we can make a step-by-step plan. It's very rarely what's happening in the moment. It's such a bigger conversation, because if I don't disappoint, so I'm going to disappoint my employee by going, no, I can't meet with you tonight because I'm headed to my son's ball game. Oh, wait, it's an emergency. I'm going to disappoint my kid, which is going to disappoint my wife. And so there's all these things that if we don't pause and go, what's my intention in the midst of this? And that takes us back to kind of that through line, that North Star kind of thing. Then we can go, all right, if this, unless it's on fire, then the answer is no.
Yep.
Or I have some firemen to put you to, because this is my commitment. And so you begin to craft and create your life in a way that those decisions become really easy because you've made them beforehand.
Mhm. I loved what you said there because I think, because I deal with a lot of high end professional type of people anyway, and having firemen or having people that can cover for you in certain situations so you can keep your commitment. Because I'm always telling guys this all the time, and I say it this way: quit telling people that you're doing this business for your kids when you're never there for your kids, you're never there for your wife, and you're not showing up. You're doing it for you. Own your shit. Now, I'll talk to a man that way because sometimes they just need to hear that. But if
Yeah,
you have firemen in place and you know your wife and you have this set appointment, there's other people, especially if you're a high level person, that you can delegate to cover this thing. If this breaks down, call Tim. Don't call me
correct.
until 9:30. And having those boundaries in does two things. One, it gives clear direction so you're not taking away your responsibilities, but it also shows your family that you love them and you spend time with them. I
Right.
slowed down my sales career to be an assistant baseball coach for my son. I never played baseball. I didn't get to. Growing up in the country, I had to work. I didn't get to do that, but he loved doing it. And I took 2 years where I didn't sell as much. Well, I mean, I still sold good because I'm great, but I know this is
Right.
cocky, but whatever. But I slowed down a little bit. I could have sold more, but I would take and I would leave work early. And I told my boss, I'm leaving at this time. My numbers are hit. That was my agreement. I had to at least hit my quota, and I was above, so she didn't care. And I think what are we being intentional about? I think that's the biggest thing because you can make a bunch of money. You can build a bunch of things. You can do a bunch of trips. You can have a bunch of cars. You can have a bunch of men, women, whatever. What it is, I think it comes down to what is in your heart that makes you happy. And I think that's what we keep seeking. And it's
Well, and
not
we're
in the money.
created, I'm going to push you one further with that. We are created for connection. I do not
Yeah.
believe the person that says, I'm happy with the car. I mean, I like the cars. I like the trips. Great. But at a soul level, before you go to bed at night, as the whispers come, your car isn't going to make you happy. Your trip is an experience that if you share it with someone that you're connected
Yeah.
to, has
Yes.
so much more meaning. And so I think I'd probably fight hard on that one to say, because I've never met somebody who has all the things that's happy if they don't have a deep connection with at least one person in their world. And it's that because we're created for that. We're created for that level of relationship. And so I want to go back to something you said that I think is so important. Do you have any regrets about those 2 years?
None. Actually, they're probably the best, two of the best years I had because I can sit back and look and be like, I got to experience the good, the bad. And he was 11 and 12. So it was like that young, fun age. Dad was still cool to be around. Like he's
Yeah.
19 now. I'm still cool, but it's a different dynamic.
And okay, so I would just want to highlight for everyone who's listening to hear that. Living on the other side of that, we spend 90% of the time we spend with our children before they're 18 years old. And 70% of that, I think before they're 13, like the 12, 13 age, I could be, it's the youth
Yeah,
age.
it's in that range.
What you don't realize, and I'm on the other side of this, my kids have lived out of my house longer than they lived in my house. I have no regrets at the hold I put in my career. My husband did something very similar to what you just said, and he has great relationships with our kids. The myth is you can have it all at the same time, and you cannot. You can have systems that allow you to have certain things, but let's use you. You couldn't make more sales on the baseball field. What you could do is trust that your sales team would make sales. And so the business would go and you make your numbers while you were investing over here. So I don't want to cause this big viral, Susie, yes, you can. I want to make it really just, it's a simple thing of we
Yeah.
live in a world of choices. And so I love that you made that choice. And I will tell you the reward on that will be 10, 100-fold because you created memories with your son. You can always make more money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And all I did was go into work a little bit earlier. I'm like, can I come in at 6 and send emails out at 6 instead of 7? Why? Because I'm owning my stuff. If it's my business and I'm building something, it's 100% ownership. I do agree with that part of like the hustle. It's 100% ownership of what I'm building. But then also, I'm going to schedule time for my family, for my wife, for what I want to do. And yeah, why would you want to just grind all the time? There's no fun in that. That's boring. That's like being a factory worker. Guess what? You're there working nights and weekends, 7 days a week, punching your clock, not doing anything. If you really want to be an entrepreneur or build a life you love, you get to go do fun stuff with people you love.
Yeah. Yeah. And for people who are stuck, so I want to address that somebody might be listening to this who goes, yeah, that's really nice to have that choice. I don't have that choice. I have to be in my work from 9 to 5. Let's say that that's their reality. What I would say is what are your choices in that space? So you got to put food on the table. And the only way you can put food on the table at this point in life is in these parameters. You always have choices. Please understand that I do believe you have choices, but someone's going to come down to the absolute, I cannot, I have to. I'm going to say, what are your choices in that moment? What are
Mhm.
your choices in that moment? How are you relating to your child? What texts are you sending? What are you prepping before and behind so that they know you're present in spirit and energetically and because you love them if you can't physically be present. So I want to be real clear that it sounds great. Being an entrepreneur is hard work. Being an employee is hard work. Choose your hard. The idea for me comes down to choice over and over and over again. And if I go all the way back to our conversation early on when you asked about the cancer and that kind of stuff is what choices do I have in the water I'm swimming in? Sometimes we can jump pools. Sometimes we can make a shift. If you've got crying babies and I have one client who is a very high performing mom and she's realizing that she's got some choices to make as a mom versus an owner. And the reality is she can't stop time and make her kids grow faster or slower. Like I have one that, like when they were babies, like you can't, that's your kid or a teenager. And we got 3 years before she goes to school. And so I am not saying deny your circumstances. I'm saying, look at your circumstances and go, what are my choices in my circumstances? If they can't be changed, what can I change and what can I choose in this space? And that, at least for me, has been an incredibly freeing way to live, because then I take accountability and I get to not be resentful and I get to own that I'm living the choices I've made.
No, I love that. I think as you grow and you get older, you realize that what's more valuable for you at the time, because I think of it this way. My daughter with theater, I made sure I went to every show that I could of hers. My
Mhm.
daughter now that does dance, even though I don't want to sit through a 7-hour ballet recital. It's not 7. I'm joking. It's a joke.
Oh, come
I mean,
on. The
I'll still
Nutcracker
go.
is 7 hours every Christmas. We all sit through it. It's
I know. And my
forever.
wife loves it. It's her favorite show. So I even get to go see it multiple times sometimes. But it's cool. It makes her happy. Sometimes you do things that make others happy because you want to spend time with them. It's great. But I think it's like you said, find what it is that you want in that season. Because guess what? Like you said, now your kids are grown. Mine are starting to move out of the house. And there's times I'm like, why is my 21-year-old 1,000 miles away building a life that she's learning to love and she's not here? A year ago, she was living with us. It hasn't even been a year since she's moved out, and it's like a weird change because that was my firstborn, and she grew up, and we went through, and she was always, and we talk on the phone now, but we would just go on walks, and it's
Yeah.
always interesting. You have to find. I want people to realize that, especially high achieving men and women, because I know both of you fall in this bucket. Don't kick it down the road saying you'll have time later. Make what's important to them be important. I did it when they started to get really young. Like when they were young, I would take them on dates and just spend time with them. I would put my phone down. I would not play on my phone while we're on our date. We
Right.
would talk and they would tell me about Barney or Mermaid or whatever it was. But then now we have great relationships. And I think you said that that's the key. What's the most valuable thing you have in your life? Most people aren't going to say money. They're either going to say their health or the people that they love.
Yeah, I would agree. And
You got
having,
me going. Sorry.
no, I love it. I love it. Well, because ultimately, so I'll go back to that woman who's dealing with this change, and she's ambitious and she's successful and she probably could run the world. And she said to me at one point, she said, "So you're telling me that I have to make a choice?" And I was like, "At some level, yes. And you're going to delay some of your ambition because unless you can clone yourself, you cannot be in two places at the same time. Physically, we have some limitations." And the reality hit her because she was like, men don't have to do that. They're not thinking the mother. And I was like, they don't have the mother gene. It's just different.
No, we don't.
And so owning our choices, and then owning the times that I chose not to be there for my kids, or owning the times that I made like woe is me choices. Like I think that's the freedom that we find. One of my keynotes I do is based on I shifted it when Taylor Swift came out with her song, "Hi, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me," was the chorus. And all these people are going and they're singing, "I'm the problem, it's me." And I was like, as a former therapist, I'm like, no, 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 because we spend so much of the early work going,
Yep.
it was your parents' stuff that they were, you're not the problem.
Mhm.
And so I was very reactionary to it internally. And so I paused and I was like, okay, what is that going on for me? And it was this idea of that reality of I don't want people to grow up thinking they're the problem. But then there was, what if I am the problem in what's going on in my life right now? And the freedom that brought me was, if I'm the problem, then I can be the solution. And
Mhm.
when I realized that, now I walk around singing, "Hey, it's me, I'm the solution, it's me," because I now can have ownership of something that can move me in the direction of what I want. And most people, again, this is, I've alluded to this Thrive program I offer. Most people don't even take time to know what they want to actually, live in truth and create harmony and be intentional and really live in a way where they're, like I use the word valor over courage, and managing their energy. When you pause and you actually do that internal work, the external world is so much easier. And if I was to
Mhm.
go all the way back to the beginning of what do you do, Susie, I help high performers do the internal work so they can create the life that they really want. Because no one wakes up and wants to be tired and stressed and lonely. They just don't.
They don't. They don't. I love what you said there because, like, I'm not a big Taylor Swift fan, but I'm not an anti Taylor Swift fan. But that song, I know the song, and I'm sitting there going, "That's a good reframe," because everyone has 100% ownership by Jocko. No one's coming to save you, blah blah blah. But they forget the part that they can be the solution. They can be the change. They can shift their world. They doesn't have to be hard. Go back into your where's the square? Where's the circle hole that I can put my circle in instead of the square? No, I love that. I know
Yeah.
people are probably screaming right now. Where can we find you? Tell me where I can find Susie. So if you can let them know, that would be awesome.
You're so kind. So one of the best ways to find me is if you want more of me, I have a LinkedIn newsletter. You can just go on, it's free, you can subscribe. You'll get that, it comes out every week. And it's based on some of these tidbits. It's not leadership you can read in books, because if you can read in a book, read in a book. It's more this next level nuanced leadership based. That's a great way to connect with me. If you want to connect with me personally, my company is LeaderSync, LeaderSynq. It's sustainable success at work and at home.com. So reach me there. In the show notes, you can just put my email, Susie@leadersync.com. I'd love to hear from you, connect with you, and hear what resonated with you, or challenge some of what we said, because I'm always willing to learn and grow. Those are probably the two best ways. And follow me on socials. I'm on Insta. I'm mostly on Insta and LinkedIn.
Awesome. No, I appreciate you being here. Before I let you go, we've talked about a ton of stuff. Is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with?
Wow. Two things. Do the work. Do the work. Like, ultimately, if you want a different life, do the work. And if you want to know more about that, message me. The second thing, and probably more important than anything else, I had a dear friend whose son died tragically 46 days ago, 13-year-old boy. It was very tragic. And it reminded me how important it is to tell the people you love them that you love them while they're here. So hug your people, call your mama, tell your kiddos you love them, because you just don't know. Those two things I would leave you with. Find who
Thank you,
you are.
Susie.
When I say do the work, I mean do the internal work. Do the work to figure out who you are, so you can love your life. You can love yourself. If you love yourself, the rest is gravy.
I love that. I love that. Yes. Tell people who you need to tell that you love them. Tell yourself that you love yourself, because a lot of times we don't do that.
Right. And
And
that probably, again, most people, it's so interesting. Children don't have a question about their value. They love themselves. They believe that they're right. They believe that they deserve the cookie. They think the toy should be theirs. Like, they love themselves, and we foster that, and somewhere we lose that. And in some of my work, I'm involved in some work with just helping people learn to love who they are. It solves a lot of problems, because then you don't have to have all these masks. You don't have to pretend, and you can say, I love myself. And when we love ourselves, we love all our people better.
yeah, no, I love that. Thank you again for being on the show, Susie.
Thanks
For
for
all of
having
you that
me.
are listening, love well, be amazing, and share this episode, because there's a ton of people that need to hear it.